It started with a single message. No alarms, no shouting, just a quiet buzz on my phone that changed everything. Adam is gone. There's debt. Those words pierced deeper than any scream. My grandson, the boy I had raised after losing my son, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only silence, unanswered calls, and a torn note full of fear. But the moment I stepped into his abandoned apartment and saw the chaos left behind, I knew something was wrong. This wasn't just about money. This was a trepanned, someone had pushed him into it. So I did what I was trained to do. I stopped being a worried grandfather and became an investigator again. And what I found? It spiraled into something so much darker than I could have ever imagined. Stay with me, because this story doesn't just expose a scam, it reveals the lengths a family will go to fight back. I still remember the exact moment I found out. No lightning strike, no crashing thunder, just the shrill ping of my phone while I was watering the orchids in the quiet morning light. It was a message from my niece, short and cryptic. "Uncle, have you heard about Adam? He's gone. There's debt." My heart sank. I read it again, then a third time, trying to will the words to change. But they didn't. Adamy grandson, my pride, the child I helped raise when his father died too soon, was gone. Not gone like on a trip or out of town. He had fled. The first thing I felt was confusion. Adam? Gone because of debt? That didn't make sense. He wasn't perfect what 23-year-old is, but he was no coward. He was thoughtful, disciplined, maybe a bit naive, but certainly not reckless. I had helped pay for his tuition. He had a part-time job at a marketing firm. He wasn't rolling in riches, but he wasn't the kind to suddenly vanish like some common delinquent. I called his phone. It rang 4 times and then clicked to voicemail. His cheerful voice greeted me, too bright and too far away. I hung up and tried again. Nothing. A strange pressure started building in my chest. Not panic, not yet, but a kind of pressure that only comes when the world starts cracking open under your feet. I rushed to his apartment, a modest studio I helped him rent downtown. The door was slightly ajar. That alone sent a chill down my spine. Inside, the place was in eerie disarray, not ransacked, not robbed, but abandoned. A half-drunk cup of coffee had gone cold on the windowsill. The bed was unmade. His laptop was missing, and so was his passport. But oddly, the bookshelf still held all his favorite titles: Sapiens, The Alchemist, even The Catcher in the Rye, which he reread every year on his birthday. Why would someone fleeing in fear leave behind their books? That's when I noticed it. A printed letter on the desk, torn at the corner as if snatched from a printer too soon. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a few lines, jagged and frantic. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I just needed time. They won't stop. I can't breathe." I sat down slowly, holding that scrap of paper like it might explode. My mind raced. They? Who were they? And what wouldn't they stop? I'd expected student loans or maybe a failed investment, but this smelled like something darker, more dangerous. I dug through his drawers, desperate for clues. Receipts, old envelopes, a few bank statements. None of them offered the answer I craved. But then, behind a drawer lining, I found something curious. A business card. Black, minimalist, no name, just a number. Underneath, in embossed silver, "When the banks say no, we say yes." My blood ran cold. I had spent 35 years in investigative journalism, uncovering frauds and scams in every corner of the city. That slogan, it was too familiar, too slick. It reeked of underground loan sharks, the kind who don't operate in daylight and don't take kindly to unpaid debts. I had reported on their work decades ago, exposed a ring that used threats and fake contracts to trap young people into borrowing money they could never repay. But I thought those days were gone. I dialed the number, no name, just heavy breathing and the sound of ambient noise, maybe a fan in the background. Then a click. They hung up. My hands were trembling now, not from fear, but fury. Someone had gotten to my grandson. Someone had pushed him into a corner, into silence, into shame. I refused to believe he had done this on his own. I knew Adam. He'd rather work 3 jobs than vanish like this, and he would never leave without saying goodbye not to me. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Something had been going on behind the scenes for months, maybe longer. I just hadn't seen it. The subtle changes in his shorter phone calls, the tired look in his eyes, the way he once joked, "Grandpa, you ever wish you could disappear for a while?" I laughed then. Now the memory tasted like ash. I reached out to his mother-me, daughter-in-law. She was frantic but defensive, blaming herself. "Maybe I pressured him too much," she whispered. "Maybe he just needed space." I wanted to yell, "This isn't about space. This is about danger." But I kept calm. I needed clarity, not chaos. I needed to be the steady one now. The next day, a call came from his bank. Apparently, Adam had maxed out not 1, but 3 credit cards in the last 90 days. The bank officer was hesitant, but with some persuasion and my old press badge still tucked in my wallet, they revealed a series of wire transfers, large sums, some to overseas accounts, some to names I didn't recognize, some in cash withdrawals from anonymous ATMs across the city. I didn't say much during the call. I just took notes. Detailed, precise, clinical, the way I used to when I was closing in on a story, because that's what this had become. A story. A story someone didn't want told. And if there's one thing I learned in all my years chasing shadows through alleyways and polished boardrooms, it's that every scam, every manipulation, every masked face has a crack somewhere. You just have to push hard enough, dig deep enough, or wait long enough for it to appear. I looked again at the message Adam had left. They won't stop. I can't breathe. My instincts kicked in, that old journalistic fire roaring back to life. I wasn't just going to find him. I was going to expose them, whoever they were. I would tear down the walls, rip off the masks, and show the world exactly what had happened to my grandson. But first I had to follow the money. The next stop, the dark web of payday loans, digital debt traps, and shadow apps that prey on desperate youth. I wasn't just a worried grandfather anymore. I was a hunter. And someone was about to learn that messing with my family came with consequences they could never predict. The city hadn't changed much since I retired from journalism, at least on the surface. The skyline still shimmered at dusk, and the downtown streets still pulsed with ambition. But underneath the glass facades and sidewalk cafes, the same rot thrived. Exploitation wearing designer suits, crime hiding behind startup logos, and predators circling the vulnerable like vultures. I knew the game too well. The only difference now was that my own grandson had become the hunted. The next morning, I was already at my old Desno, more of a nostalgic fixture than a command center going through every scrap of information I could gather. I wasn't just tracing Adam's footsteps. I was diving headfirst into a rabbit hole, hoping there was still time to pull him out. I started with the business card I'd found. A reverse image search turned up nothing. I tried the number again, this time using a burner app that masked my caller ID. A robotic voice answered, "Thank you for calling Direct Advanced Solutions. Your call may be monitored. Please hold." The line went dead. Direct Advanced Solutions, I murmured. It was a name too generic to be real and too careful not to be suspicious. I searched corporate records, no registry, no address. Just that number, floating in online forums and complaint boards like a ghost ship. Dozens of posts from young people. They promised fast loans, but now they're threatening my family. Fake contracts, forced repayment, threatening messages. I'm afraid to leave my apartment. It hit me like a gut punch. Adam hadn't just made bad choices. He'd been targeted. This wasn't about laziness or irresponsibility. It was about coercion. He'd walked into a digital trap, probably through some sleek app or social media post offering quick loans for students. He likely clicked, filled out a few forms, and before he knew it, he was trap chased by collectors with no official names, interest rates rising like floodwaters, and threats that got personal real fast. And if I knew anything about these operations, I knew this. They didn't stop at emails. They came to your door. They sent messages to your friends. They made you disappear. I needed to find his last digital footprint. I called in a favor from my old colleague, David, a cybersecurity analyst who now worked for a private firm. Within hours, he had Adam's IP logs showing logins from 2 different cities in 1 week, a clear red flag. The second location was a rundown neighborhood near the edge of the city, far from where Adam lived. A hideout, maybe, or a trap. But the real shock came when David cross-referenced the IPs. There's something else, he said, lowering his voice. The server Adam last connected to its linked to a darknet directory. I traced it to an invite-only loan site, buried behind a VPN wall, crypto-based transactions only. I got in using old credentials. And guess what? He paused. They had his name, his photo. I went silent. What kind of site is it? I asked. It's not public facing. It's more like a lending board mixed with a bounty form, he said grimly. Users post names of people who've defaulted. They attach photos, locations, contact info. It's like a punishment hall of shame. One post said, Adam M. defaulted on 6th hike, 3 months behind. Families should be warned. I felt bile rise in my throat. My grandson had been listed, like a wanted criminal, on a digital wall of shame. That was when the anger took over. It wasn't just about Adam anymore. It was about every other scared kid whose face I'd seen on that cursed site. The faceless machines of tech exploitation were feeding off the man now one had its claws in my bloodline. It was time to push back. I pulled out my old journalist notebooks, coded symbols, contact aliases, shadow sources. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in years. A former whistleblower from a financial crimes unit, a retired detective turned private eye, even a young hacker who once exposed a fake charity ring and owed me a favor. I told them everything, not because I wanted help, but because I wanted backup. I was going in. Our first breakthrough came from a seemingly harmless corner, social media. Adam's accounts were wiped clean, but his best friend, Jordan, hadn't been as careful. On a post from 3 months ago, I saw a group photo at a house party. Behind Adam on the wall hung a neon sign, Fast Cash Lounge. It wasn't a real business, but it was a name. I cross-searched it on hidden forums and found it. Fast Cash Lounge was an encrypted app running under various aliases: Quick Advance, Dollar Hop, Student Spark. It used microloans to hook students, then drowned them in fees, late penalties, and auto renewals. There were no humans, just bots and brutal contracts that threatened criminal charges if you dared default. But it got darker. Jordan agreed to meet me reluctantly. He told me he borrowed a few $100 for a new laptop, he said. Didn't seem like a big deal. But then the emails came. Then texts. Then threats. They told him if he didn't pay $500 by midnight, they'd make his school records vanish. Next week it was 2-0. Then 5-0. I pressed him. Where did he go? Do you know? Jordan looked away. He didn't say, but he mentioned someone named Carla. Said she helped people escape from this mess. I think she was a former borrower. That was my next lead. Carla. No last name, no number, just a ghost in Adam's story. But I would find her. And when I did, the entire game was going to change. The name Carla burned in my mind like a cipher I had to crack. There was no last name, no direct link, but something about the way Jordan had whispered Itholf in awe, half in fear, told me she wasn't just a loose end. She was the key. A former borrower who had somehow outwitted the predators and survived to talk about it. That made her rare and dangerous. And exactly who I needed, but people like Carla didn't want to be found. I started where most people wouldn't, in the comment sections of conspiracy forums and the margins of digital whistleblower spaces. Weeks ago, I would have laughed if someone told me to read threads titled Loan Sharks in Disguise or Debt Rings Using College Kids as Collateral. Now I clung to them like gospel. In one post, a user under the handle Luna9 described a woman who called herself Carla, who helped erase debts by forging system shutdowns, resetting payment cycles, even blackmailing the scammers themselves. Another post says she lived off-grid but shows up where payday pain is loudest. That was enough. Using what little digital trail I could gather, I triangulated a set of message boards she'd been active on and cross-checked user behaviors with activity spikes in a specific districta, poor but tightly knit immigrant neighborhood on the east side. There, I wandered, asking discreet questions, showing no photos but dropping enough bait. It took 3 days until someone finally said, "You're looking for the debt ghost, aren't you?" I kept my face neutral. She runs an internet cafe, calls herself Kara now, but yeah, she helps the broken ones. The cafe was unassuming. Dusty glass, flickering sign, 3 teenagers playing online games inside. But at the back, behind a curtain of cheap beads, sat a woman no older than 35. Short hair, sharp eyes, wearing a hoodie that looked like it had stories sewn into every thread. She looked up as I entered. "You're not here for internet," she said flatly. "You're here for someone who doesn't want to be found." I didn't answer immediately. I placed Adam's photo on the table. Her expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of recognition. "You, his father?" she asked. "His grandfather," I replied. She nodded slowly, then motioned for me to sit. "Then I assume you're not here to judge him, or to clean up the mess. You're here for blood." I hesitated, then said the words like a vow. "I'm here to burn the whole thing down." She leaned back and smiled grimly. "Good." Over the next hour, Carla or Cara, as she now preferred, told me everything. The scam was bigger than I thought. These weren't simple loan sharks hiding behind apps. They were a syndicate, tech literate, globally backed, laundering money through fake fintech companies and protected by shell firms registered in obscure jurisdictions. The app Adam had used, Quick Advance, was just one mask. There were dozens each, more polished, more appealing, and more aggressive than the last. The apps offered instant money in 30 seconds to students, freelancers, and immigrants. The contracts were invisible, buried in digital terms. But if the borrower failed to repay, the threats began. Exposure of private data, altered credit scores, even digital kill switches that locked their devices remotely. In some cases, they threatened to plant incriminating files on people's phones. In others, they simply disappeared the defaulters. "Why haven't the police shut it down?" I asked. Carla looked at me, tired. "Because there's no one to arrest. No building to raid. No server in this country. The whole thing's built on decentralized cloud hosting. Half the time, they don't even know who's running what. The code runs itself. The rest, that's handled by freelance enforcers, local thugs who monitor forums and hit vulnerable users with extortion calls." "And Adam?" I asked. She paused. "Last I heard, he tried to fight back. He hacked into one of their portals and deleted some files. Rookie move. Brave, but foolish. That's when they put a bounty on him." My chest tightened. "A bounty?" "They want to make an example out of him. Publicly. They'll ruin him, or they'll kill him." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then I spoke. "Help me find them. Help me expose them. And I swear, they'll never do this to anyone again." Kara nodded. "It'll cost you." "I'm not here for cheap justice," I said. "I'm here to destroy." That's when the plan began. We split the operation into phases. I would use my old press credentials to pose as an industry researcher interested in fintech trends. That would get me access to expos, webinars, and executive panels where I could get close to the surface, players those who knew more than they were willing to admit. Kara would dig deeper, pulling threads through the dark web and luring low-level operatives into slipping up. We set up fake identities, dummy apps, and a burner server to bait a response. Within a week, we had a bite. An Agent Anonymous bold, arrogant message one of our dummy borrower accounts. They claimed to be customer support from NextSpark Credit, offering a chance to resolve the debt amicably. Kara tracked the IP to a coffee shop, then a residential building. I paid a kid $50 to stake it out. That night, the kid texted me. Guy just left wearing all black, had a laptop, got in a car, took pics. The license plate led us to a rented vehicle under a shell corporation, a shell that I traced miraculously to a real human name. The first real name we'd gotten, a compliance officer for a fintech company. I won't say his name here, yet, but he'd made a mistake. He used a personal number for one business transaction. One crack was all we needed. Using every connection I had left, I arranged a meeting posing as a documentary filmmaker interested in how financial technology was changing lives. I wore a wire. I asked questions casually, then more directly. I dangled the name of the app Adam had used. His eyes twitched. Sweat formed at his collar. "We only provide back-end processing," he said. "We don't control how the apps operate." But that was a lie. A big one. And I had it on tape. I handed the footage to a former producer of mine who now worked for a global investigative podcast. We had a deal, full expose, anonymous for now, but with staged reveals depending on how far we could push this. The episode went live within a week, titled "The Debt Trap You Downloaded." It went viral overnight. Suddenly, names were surfacing. Survivors came forward, and some coward at the top was getting scared. Because that's when they messaged me. No return address, no name, just a single encrypted note. "Stop digging, or you'll bury your grandson for good." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I smiled. It meant they were watching, which meant I was close. Very, very close. The message was a line in the sand. "Stop digging, or you'll bury your grandson for good." I stared at the words as if they might rearrange themselves into something less cruel, something less final. But they didn't. They were exactly what they sounded, like a warning from a corner of the digital world that had no face, no mercy, and now, apparently, my full attention. Carla read the message over my shoulder. Her face tightened but didn't flinch. "They know you're close," she said, "and that means Adam's still alive." It was a twisted kind of comfort. The syndicate didn't threaten corpses. But we were running out of time. While the expose had gone viral and stirred a global conversation about digital lending abuse, it also triggered the very retaliation we feared. The deeper I probed, the more I sensed something was about to break not in their operation, but in my own heart. Because what I hadn't told Carla or anyone else was that I'd been receiving anonymous emails for days-blurred photos of Adam. One showed him in a rundown bus station, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes darting sideways. Another was outside a pawn shop. In one image, he was barefoot, holding a crumpled jacket and a cracked phone. But the one that shattered me, was a shot of him curled in a stairwell, face hidden, knees drawn to chest like a boy, not a man. I hadn't cried in years. That night, I did. But grief wasn't going to save him. I doubled down. Carla used the surge of attention from the expose to bait the ring further. She posed as a desperate borrower, offering a fee to erase her record. We knew the trick show vulnerability: suggest an incoming payment and request a meetup with a field agent. Most were smart enough to decline, but one wasn't. A mid-level enforcer named Leon took the bait, agreeing to a face-to-face handoff in an abandoned strip mall on the city's fringe. I watched the whole thing unfold from a nearby van, sweat soaking the back of my shirt. Carla had a body cam. Leon showed up in a black hoodie, face partially covered, and eyes scanning for trouble. He looked around 30, nervous but used to danger. Carla handed him a fake envelope filled with blank bills and asked, "You ever hear the name Adam M?" Leon stiffened. "Not supposed to talk about ghosts," he said. "But you know him?" Leon looked down, then mumbled, "He messed up the files. Burned 2 bots. Cost the boss money." "Where is he?" Carla pressed. Leon hesitated. "Gone off grid, but not far. There's a house they use to cool people down before final steps, near Mill Creek. Red door, 3rd floor. If he's alive, that's where." I didn't wait for confirmation. Within the hour, I was in my car, Carla beside me, adrenaline overriding caution. Mill Creek was a dying part of town buildings, half abandoned, windows boarded, graffiti like open wounds on old brick. We parked a block away, approached on foot. The red-doored building stood like a forgotten sentinel, crooked and silent, its 3rd-floor windows taped with cardboard. My heart beat faster than it had in decades. We picked the lock. Years of arthritis made my hands clumsy, but instinct still guided me. Inside, the building was quiet, too quiet. A hallway of dust and echoes. We climbed the stairs, each creak like a countdown. Third floor, red door. I knocked once, then again, harder. No response. Then movement, a shadow under the crack. I spoke softly. Adam, it's Grandpa. Silence. Please, open the door. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to bring you home. The knob turned, slowly. Then the door opened, and there he was. Thinner, paler, bruised at the jaw, eyes sunken, but unmistakably Adam, my grandson, my boy, alive. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. He collapsed into my arms, and I held him like I did when he was 5 and scraped his knee on the playground. His body shook with Sopsilin at first, then heaving, releasing weeks, maybe months of terror, guilt, and isolation. I tried, Grandpa, he whispered. I tried to fix it, but it got worse. They told me if I fought back, they'd hurt you. I didn't know what to do. You did enough, I said, clutching him tighter. You survived. And now, we finished this together. Carla scanned the room while we reunited. There were notebooks, napkins covered in scribbled numbers, and a flash drive duct taped to the underside of the bed frame. Adam had been documenting everything. Every call, every email, every time-stamped abuse. His intention hadn't been to ruin it, had been to expose. But fear had paralyzed him before he could finish. Now we had his records. And a voice the world was waiting to hear. But we couldn't go back to my house. We needed safety. Real protection. I called an old friend, Detective Morales, now working for a federal cybercrimes unit. Within hours, Adam was under protective custody, his evidence being mirrored, verified, and encrypted. And me? I was preparing for the next war. Because the moment the syndicate realized we'd pulled Adam out, they would retaliate. And retaliate they did. The very next day, someone slashed my car tires, hacked my email, and released a deepfake video of Adam claiming responsibility for cybercrimes he never committed. But this time, I was ready. I had a media team, a legal squad, an audience, and most importantly, I had the truth. Adam gave a live testimony the following week, eyes red but voice clear. His footage, paired with the files we recovered, blew the lid off the entire operation. Global outlets picked it up. Lawmakers began issuing subpoenas. A multinational task force formed within 48 hours. And somewhere in the digital shadows, the syndicate watched as their machine began to crumble, taken down, not by corporations, not by governments, but by a grandfather who refused to let fear win. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because while the public now knew the scheme existed, I knew the names. And next, I was going to say them out loud. The firestorm had begun. Adam's live testimony had gone viral across platforms. In the first 6 hours alone, over 10 million people watched the clip of a trembling young man looking into the camera and saying, I thought I was getting help. What I got was a prison with no bars and no door. But I survived. And this is how they operate. The world listened, and the predators panicked. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Not until every shadow behind this syndicate had a name and a consequence. Because they had tried to bury my grandson under shame and silence. Now, I would bury them under truth. The final blow wouldn't be digital. It would be personal. While the media swarmed and public outcry mounted, I focused on something far more surgical. Connecting the digital infrastructure of this criminal network to real-world names. For weeks, Carla, Adam, and I had mapped the web, shell corporations, holding firms, fake fintech startups. But what we found next made even Carla go quiet. One of the syndicate's largest fronts, a youth lending platform, with a shiny website, celebrity endorsements, and smiling testimonials, had a board of directors made up entirely of AI-generated personas. Not one real person listed. But in a moment of pure luck or fate, traced one payment from this platform back to a Hong Kong logistics company which routed through Singapore. and landed in a boutique hedge fund account registered to a real man, Julian Locke. Julian was a former fintech executive, a well-known visionary in the industry, who'd mysteriously disappeared 5 years ago after an embezzlement scandal. Publicly, he'd been cleared of wrongdoing. Privately, he had rebranded, repurposed, and resurfaced running this empire of exploitation behind digital curtains. And he made a mistake. He liked attention. Buried deep in the platform's launch code, Adam had found something unusual in Easter egg. A single line of text buried in the backend metadata. JL was here. A calling card. Narcissistic. Reckless. Identifying. That was all I needed. I compiled the evidence meticulously. Every bank transfer, every name variant, every piece of metadata. And then I prepared my own expose not filtered through a newsroom, not watered down by editorial red tape. This was personal, raw, direct. I called it The Predator in the Mirror. I uploaded it myself, 1 hour, uncut, my voice, my face, the entire truth. I spoke not just as a journalist, not just as a grandfather, but as a witness to a silent war happening in the pockets of millions. This isn't just about Adam, I began, staring straight into the lens. This is about a system that thrives on your silence, your fear, and your desperation. A system that looks like help but feels like a noose. And the man behind it, he isn't hiding in the shadows anymore. He's wearing a suit. He's giving TED Talks. His name is Julian Locke, and this is what he's done. Then I dropped the documents. Bank statements, source code, leaked contracts, screenshots of chat logs between enforcers, surveillance photos, Carla's testimony, and Adam's flash drive archive. The video hit 1 million views in 90 minutes, then 10 million by morning. But the most important view? Interpol? Within 48 hours, a warrant was issued for Julian Locke. Another for a half dozen financial middlemen who had funneled his money. The house of cards didn't fall, it exploded. Every news channel ran with the story. Protests erupted outside microloan agencies. Senators called for new regulation on digital lending. And the fake companies, they began disappearing, one by one. We had dismantled the machine, but we had also created something else. Hope. That same week, I was invited to speak at a summit on digital justice. I declined. I didn't need a stage. I had done what I came to do. Instead, I stood on the back porch with Adam Freenow, healing slowly, his face less shadowed, his shoulders straighter. We watched the sun set. The same porch where I once taught him to skip stones, where we laughed over burnt marshmallows and told ghost stories until the stars came out. I didn't think anyone would believe me, he said quietly. I didn't need them to, I replied. I just needed them to hear you. He nodded, eyes glistening. Carla visited us a week later. She was leaving town, new name, new life. But before she left, she gave Adam a small notebook. Inside were names of others dozens who'd reached out to her since the expose. Victims, survivors, fighters. Adam looked at me. We can help them. I smiled. Yes, but this time we helped them in the light. He shook my hand, not the way a boy greets his grandfather, but the way a man thanks another for standing by him when it mattered most. And in that moment, I understood something. The plan I had made me so-called unbelievable expose was never really about revenge. It was about reclamation, of dignity, of truth, of the right to speak your pain and not be punished for it. Adam didn't need saving. He just needed someone to believe his story was worth finishing. And together, we finished it, one name at a time, one truth at a time. And for every predator hiding behind code and clever branding, know this. There are still people in this world who don't run from fire. We walk straight into it, and we take you down. And that, my friends, is how we expose the wolves hiding behind polished apps and pretty promises. My grandson is free. The predators are falling, one by one. But the fight isn't over, because this could happen to anyone's child, anyone's family. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or if you know someone who's quietly drowning in silence like Adam once was, please share this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts or experiences. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep shining light into the shadows. Because the more we speak up, the less power fear has over us. Thank you for watching, and never underestimate what one determined heart can uncover.